Nigeria plans to sign an Africa Free Trade Agreement at the coming African Union Summit. Now, apart from Nigeria, only Eritrea and Benin have chosen not to join the zone. President Muhammadu Buhari had expressed concern it could allow neighboring countries to inundate Nigeria with low-priced goods and confound efforts to encourage moribund local manufacturing and expand farming. But a panel set up to assess the impact of joining the bloc recommended last week the president should consider joining. And a Zimbabwe human rights lawyer has asked the High Court to overturn a government decision to ban the use of foreign currencies, a move that could potentially derail plans for a new currency if the court finds in his favor. The government had introduced an interim currency, the RTG's dollar, in a bid to end a decade of dollarization. On June 24, it renamed the new currency the Zimbabwe dollar and declared it Zimbabwe's sole legal tender. In South Africa, the private sector activity remained in contraction in June as factory output slipped on a slide in new orders, while a slowdown in overall demand stretched to a full year. IHS Market's Purchasing Managers Index inched up to 49.7 in June, from 49.3 in May, remaining below the 50-point mark that separates expansion from growth for the fourth time in the 6 months of 2019. To talk more on this is an economic and data analyst in South Africa, Trinity Nkube. Hello, Mr. Nkube. Thank you for coming through to us.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me again.
So the PMI on private sector activity in June released today by IHS shows a slight increase on the PMI, but activity remains in contraction. How would you read those numbers?
Well, I would say there are no surprises there, given the largest contraction that we have had for over a decade now. So it remains to be seen whether we are going to recover, on the long term. But we're off for a bumpy road in the next 2 quarters. So I'm not at all surprised. We just really hope that when the president comes from the G-20, that there will be some recovery and reforms, to get us on the track.
Now, this contraction is not far-fetched from the power crisis linked to Eskom debt crisis. President Cyril Ramaphosa has already pledged about 230 billion rand of financial support for Eskom over the next 10 years. But how sustainable is this?
I would say, our government has a track record of not having a strategic plan, or if they have it in place, implementation is always the biggest challenge. So what we see is a reaction and putting of fires. What would have been more sustainable would have been going the renewable energy route. That hasn't happened. There isn't any concrete plan towards that. However, as we speak, there's nothing that we can do. Eskom has to be running because the electricity is very important to the South African businesses and communities. It remains to be seen if we are able to attract about $100 billion, as the president has put it. Then yes, and we have a plan to actually have Eskom running, from a strategic and operational perspective. The Minister of Public Enterprises and so forth have come out and say they need to intervene, making these SOEs, more productive and more efficient. If that is the case, then yes, there might be a turnaround.
Now, the news coming in today says the South African government is weighing swapping the state power firm's debt for government bonds and moving it to a special purpose vehicle. Wondering, is this a better option to save the ailing power firm?
At this point, there's really no other option, because then this kind of option constrains government and Eskom to put their houses in order. So in terms of who will rack up the debt and who will actually have to pay for it, so then it means that the default is not an option. So unfortunately, as bad as it is, that's the only plausible solution at this point. It remains to be seen, but then it also constrains, Eskom management in terms of what else can they do when they've borrowed this. They have to pay back, and government also has to be, directly involved. We might actually see some CEOs from government and some third parties, independent parties coming in, try and clean up house.
All right, we'll continue to monitor developments out there in South Africa. Thank you for your time, Trinity.
Thank you very much.
And the equities market earlier in the week, the Nigerian Stock Exchange had a biannual recomposition of sectors to review companies and recalibrate the index for each counter. Now let's talk to Temple Ashaju about this and, of course, update on today's market activities. Hello, Temple. Good afternoon. Well, you have to bring us up to speed with what the trading activities have been today. But first, yes, the stock exchange just had their biannual recomposition of sectors. What's the significance of that in the market?
Well, basically, these are meant to they're investable benchmarks, if you like, to basically measure and track some of the sector-specific performances that you have in the market. A lot of sectors, we now have in the market due to some kind of collaborations with operators like AfriInvest, like Mary Stem, and of course the major indices of the markets generally. So you have different numbers of liquid and well-capitalized stocks across different sectors. So these changes basically just reflect the kind of representation and performance that you have across some of the companies. If you look at the NSE 30, for example, that now has a custodian investment PLC displacing Dangote Flour. Recall that Dangote Flour has has experienced some kind of interest from Olam Nigeria Limited, which is an unlisted company, now looking to buy over the interest of Crown PLC in Dangote Flour, and that is something that would delist that company eventually. Now you have Dangote Flour listed or classified rather under two key sectors, under the NSE 30 and the consumer goods segment of the market. Under the consumer goods segment, it is going to be displaced by MC Nicole. If you look at the banking side of things, there was basically no movement in that side of things. You have under the insurance segment, Veritas Capital replacing Suno Insurance. If you look at the liquidity level that we are now seeing around NACO PLC, that is now to replace Total Nigeria PLC under the NSE Islamic Lotus Index. So we're seeing these changes across these sectors, given the stories and news that surround the performance of some companies. First Aluminium Extrusion PLC, for example, will be delisted from the stock exchange. And of course, that has also gotten some kind of a replacement under the industrial goods side of the market by Notori Chemical Industry. So that's why this kind of exercise actually happens twice in a year. It's a biannual exercise here at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. But talking about the performance of the market so far today, things are really in the negative territory. And we do hope that during last-minute trading, things will turn positive.
All right, I can see the trading floor quite busy there. Just wondering what is happening. Anyway, thank you for those updates, Temple. And on that note, we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimezie Obi Uwagu.